On the Indian Navy's part, it is always being said that when talk about all three forces, and when you look at from the perspective of Make in India or the indigenization, Indian Navy is the one which is has made a stride ahead of both the Air Force and Army. So in that perspective, how would you describe Indian Navy's achievements as far as this year is concerned, going ahead and making things indigenously?
As I mentioned, Vishal, the Kolkata class ships, fully indigenous. The missile, as I mentioned, it's a joint development between DRDO and the Israeli aircraft industry. So that is one very big achievement that we have made. And if you go and see these destroyers, I had the opportunity to visit one of them very recently. They are actually world-class ships. They can do 33, 34 knots. They can keep an enemy away, an airborne enemy away beyond 70 miles, which is a big achievement. Everything is fully automatic. And it has got an equivalent of an ISAR radar. Nothing is required to be done. It does the scanning, it selects the target, it tracks the target, and it destroys the target. So I think on the indigenous front, it is quite a big achievement.
Okay.
Having said that, even the Scorpion class submarine, as you know, is now being built here in MDL in Mumbai. But on the policy front, there is one big change which has taken place. With the arrival of China in the Indian Ocean region and their collusion with Pakistan, it was being sensed that the maneuvering space for the Navy and so for the whole country in the Indian Ocean is actually going to shrink, because you will have these fellows all over the place, or maybe the places where you didn't expect. So the decision has been taken that, okay, let us monitor the wider space. And in that context, the fusion center which came up in Gurugram the other day, the defense minister inaugurated, that has got a very important significance. 28 countries are part of it. And by saying it is an IOR fusion center, meaning that anybody who thinks that free and open navigation is the order of the day and the rule of the law must prevail, those countries can join this. So that is one. The second thing, big important thing that has happened is the Navy has decided that it will have mission-based deployment. All the choke points, the Straits of Hormuz, the Gulf of Aden, the Straits of Malacca, the Lombok Strait, the Sunda Strait, at all those straits, we have either a submarine or an aircraft or a surface ship on patrol 24/7. So that's a very big achievement. Now you will say, okay, fine, they have to come back to harbor to take fuel and go back. In that context, the signing of LEMOA, both with the US and a similar one with France, gives us the access to operate from Reunion Island. With Indonesia, we have signed an agreement for Sabang. On the Gulf Coast, we have signed an agreement with Oman for Duqm Port. And I'm sure that in coming days, there will be some signatures in the African coast. So that gives you a very wide area to monitor and expand your strategic space of maneuvering for all services, those who can reach.
Okay.
Otherwise, with China coming in and Pakistan causing up too much, we're getting a feeling that, we are going to shrink in our space. But that has been done away with.
Okay, coming back to the joint exercise and the other exercises part, Air Commodore Dixit pointed out Gagan Shakti, and I'd like to bring in General Arora here. General Arora, like all three forces, Indian Army also participated in a number of exercises, joint exercises with a number of countries. One is, which definitely our viewers would want to know about it, is that what purpose does this exercises serve? And since this year had seen so many of them, how would it have benefited the forces?
See, we have been exercising, we have been doing joint exercises amongst the services, and we have been doing joint exercises with friendly foreign nations, including China. We go to China and the Chinese come here to do these exercises. The purpose of doing exercises with foreign powers is to inculcate friendliness. It is military diplomacy. It is also, one of the purposes is to let them see what they are using. It is a fillip being given to defense exports. The defense exports promotion scheme includes doing joint exercises. And of course, it sends out signals about our friendship with these countries. Within the armed forces, we do joint exercises, particularly because we don't have joint organization or joint command. that is to have better synergy amongst the three services.
Amongst the three services.
And when it comes to doing joint operations, we know each other's SOPs and we follow a common SOP.
Okay.
That is the purpose.
Okay, let's, we're running short of time, but let's look at what the future holds for all three forces and what might be the challenges when we talk about 2019. Let's begin with the Indian Air Force. Air Commodore Dixit, from the IAF's perspective, what do you believe for the next 1 year at least should be the topmost on the agenda as far as the Air Force is concerned? And what is it that is clearly very, very important for the force?
Well, having put their induction programs into the pipeline, I think the Air Force should now build to practice the aspect of jointness, which is very necessary, and that is the fulcrum of the thinking of the Indian Armed Forces. Some efforts have been done. I might as well add, they did an exercise in rapid air mobility, where they lifted 500 tons of load. This is done by Western Command over a 6 hours period. Now, this is an exercise in togetherness with the Indian Army. The Air Force by itself has no meaning, so there is a participation.
The synergy between both the forces.
Also, I might as well add, we are talking about global exercises. Under the aegis of the Shanghai Cooperation, we did an exercise managed by the Russians in which we went along with the Pakistani troops to practice counter-terrorist practices. I think in your program several years ago, programs ago, you have talked about this. That, I think, is a great foreign policy posture. Having said that, let me put it this way, that whilst the Air Force has tried to demonstrate to the Indian milieu and the Indian largely populace that they have built in a capacity for outreach, for joint togetherness, and going to the American mainland for exercises, conducting paratrooping over there, where the troops went from the special forces element of the Indian Army. So there is this practice of understanding the overall role of the Indian Armed Forces and to be an active participant in that process. That is what I see would be probably be looked at in the years to come.
Okay. Admiral Sinha, from the Indian Navy's perspective, now that we have INS Arihant operational and several other ships and frigates being made, what exactly would you see the topmost on the agenda of Indian Navy for 2019?
I'll take off from where Air Commodore Dixit finished. You know, we already have in process the major amphibious exercises when it comes to amongst the services. All three services participate. And what do we practice? We practice in the peacetime to how to manage a disaster, how to mitigate the impacts of disaster, and we go on to our own territories and we go worldwide. Particularly in the Indian Ocean region is going to be very, very relevant. So these exercises have to be sort of more frequent and participation of larger number of forces. In wartime, it's a good thing that you can land your troops in out-of-area contingency, or we have island territories. If there are any doubts about, its safety and security, our forces can be landed very, very, very quickly with all three forces combined. So we have a SOP already, and that needs to be rehearsed. When it comes to with the international sort of exercises, where the Navy is a very large participant of so many countries, multilateral exercises, Malabar is one example. The interoperability amongst the nations is a very important thing. But tomorrow, if 2-3 countries have to come together, even to operate in peacetime, and if they don't have the standard operating procedure as to what will be the interoperability processes, those SOPs are being laid down, and this is the biggest achievement of the Indian Navy, along with other countries, that you can operate together without having to bother how will I talk to him, how will I operate, what will be the SOP. So these things have been sorted out, and with many more countries it needs to be done.
Okay.
Japan has to come on board because Japan has got a little pessimist sort of defense posture, but now they are coming out of it, and they will have the aircraft carrier, and we have had a lot of experience of operating the carriers. So I am going to see that, I will think that, this needs to be hastened, and I'm sure it will get hastened.
Okay. General Arora, from Indian Army's point of view.
Not only Indian Army, but for all three services, the capabilities that we desire to have by the year 2030, and we all have the long-term perspective plan laid out, If we want to achieve that, we must start allocating more money for modernization, which we are not doing at the present, with the result that it is desirable that we should have 30 to 40% of state-of-the-art futuristic technologies, equipment and platforms, about 30% of contemporary technologies, and maybe do with 30% of legacy equipment or obsolete technologies. This has to be reversed. Right now, the situation is not good. We must allocate more. As far as the army is concerned, some steps have been taken, like this year we found the INSAS rifle is being replaced, the bulletproof jackets are being provided, the artillery guns are coming in. But as far as the armor goes, as far as infantry fighting vehicles go, we haven't started the process. Whatever we started had hiccups, and we took 2 steps back. As far as air defense guns go, a large number of them require replacement. So we are running behind our adversaries who are going forward in leaps and bounds to modernize their forces. We must keep that in mind.
Okay, wonderful. So as our panelists have pointed out, these are the major milestones for all the 3 armed forces as far as